So, a very good afternoon, everybody, and it's such an honor and pleasure for me today, specifically because of the guest that I have today. He's an amazing man. Now, let me put it like this. Let's imagine you are in the cockpit of a fighter jet, and you are like taking on the world, conquering the world, and the peak of your performance, and then you just eject out of the fighter jet and you land in the ocean of uncertainties on a different plane completely altogether. Would you do that? No, Malab, how many would of you who would be so successful coming first in all semesters, getting an engineering degree from the College of Engineering Pune, one of the reputed engineering colleges in Pune, joining a leading brand in the IT sector that was booming then, and people are crazy. I remember when I went to Hyderabad for one of my posting, I also saw a visa god. Well, I was so surprised. I went to the temple, and Balaji temple it was, and people, if they took 108 around the temple, it was like guaranteed visa, no? And like I actually went and saw that, and they were distributing like those pins where you could do that. That was the era when people were dying to get into IT. And here is this young man gets into it, gets whatever a young man would desire, and then lets it all go. How many of us do that? So today for you, I have a very interesting conversation, the dance between spirituality and materialism. And let's see, where do we find the purpose of life, and where do we find some place in that, if possible, in the conversation. Today I have for you Swamiji, Sri Gaur Gopal Das, one of the most amazing speakers that I have seen personally and heard him. And I could not resist getting him for this conversation. So all of us, if we could benefit from it. So my first question to you would be, which is the very, very obvious one, which comes very, very naturally. At that age, when you're doing so well, and then you eject out of this and you come into a very different sphere altogether. No? A lot of people say spiritualism comes when you go through difficult times, when you are not facing a crisis in life, or when you are forced to introspect because of all the cornering that happened in life. That is what is mostly said. But for a young man at the peak of his glory, how do you and why do you do this? So it's about you today, Swamiji, that we want to talk about.
Thank you very much, Tapanji, for having me over for your very unique talk show called Tea and Tales. I have a cup with me as well.
Thank you, Swamiji. That's for the.
We have to do that with Tea and Tales. You can't do it without a cup, right? So
Hey,
I'm very.
Sorry, Swamiji. More than that, I think why I keep this like this is whenever we have conversation with friends, and in colleges, remember that sitting on that roadside pulia, the tea brought out the best conversations and the best philosophies of life. Thinking the two together is very, very critical. So
Indeed. So thank you very much for having me over for this talk, and thanks to everyone who's joining in today as well to listen to this conversation that we're having together. And thank you for beginning with that question. What was the tipping point? What made me change from what I was doing to what I'm doing today? Why the spiritual urge when I was doing well? Usually people would kind of feel that, when things are not going well, or when everything is in the well, that's when you take to spirituality. So how come this sudden shift? So I think for me to make that shift was a combination of two things. The first thing was I was doing decently well at my work and getting paid well as well. The problem was I wasn't happy with what I was doing. A lot of people in the world today, especially in the corporate world, professionals, are skilled, they're talented, they're great at what they do. And because they're great at what they do, they also get a thick, fat paycheck. But I'm really not sure whether it fulfills them. The nature of their work fulfills them, satisfies them. I wouldn't be shocked to say, I would say rather, people who are listening to us shouldn't be shocked to hear what I'm saying. About 80 to 90% of professionals today, well-paid professionals, get a thick, fat paycheck, but are not happy with their work. And I think we're not just meant to be happy with our entertainment or our relationships at home or what we eat and what we have and where we go for a holiday. I think they're meant to be happy at work as well. Right? I often bring in the mathematical side to work. Like I say, if you work for about 8 hours a day, conservative number, it's way more than that, but 8 hours a day and 5 days a week, that makes it 40 hours a week, right? And if you take a holiday of 2 weeks annually, so that's 50 weeks a year. So 50 into 40 is 2,000 hours at your workplace a year. And if on an average, if you're working for about 45 years, that makes it a good 90,000 hours at your workplace. Now, that's a daunting number, sir. 90,000 hours of your life, precious hours of your life, go at your workplace. That accounts to about 10 years of your lifespan. I'm really not sure if I'm going to spend my 10 years crying, say I'm paid well, but I don't like what I do, you know? So I questioned myself that I'm getting paid well. I'm also good at what I do, but it doesn't fulfill me. So I thought I want to be very true to myself, very authentic. You know, one of the most important aspects of living a great life is to be extremely authentic in what we do. Authenticity and being true and honest to ourselves brings a very deep sense of fulfillment. So, which is when I decided I wanted to make that shift. It probably was not such a well deliberated shift. It probably may have been a sporadic shift. I wouldn't advise people to do what I did, but at the same time, the principle stands strong that we need to examine, we need to introspect to see if our work is fulfilling us. So, one reason why I made that shift was this. The second reason why I made that shift was when I said, okay, HP doesn't fulfill me, right? HP doesn't kind of bring me that satisfaction. This is not me. Then the next obvious question was, what is me? मैं कई बार कहता हूँ ना, हम इस दुनिया के आवाज में अपने आप को इतना खो देते हैं कि खुद से बहुत दूर हो जाते हैं.
क्या बात?
We get so drowned in the noise of the outside world that we forget our voice. You know, it's very crucial that we don't allow the noise around us to make us drown in that noise and forget our voice. So I said, okay, this is not fulfilling me, so what will? अगर मैं ये नहीं हूं तो मैं क्या हूं? और यही सवाल लोग पूछते नहीं है अपने आप से. And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying real life needs, families, mortgages, liabilities keep us so busy that we forget to be authentically our own selves. So at that time, then I asked myself this question: if it's not this, what is it? And it takes its own sweet time to be able to figure out what it is. And then the answer that I got from within was, I am not, although I'm great at working with machines, softwares, that's not my passion. My passion is not working with machines. My passion is working with human beings who are behind the machine. So I could have entered into psychology, I could have entered into psychiatry, I could have entered into behavioral sciences to study how human interactions can be bettered and enhanced. But I decided to go the ancient way because that was also my inner calling, my spiritual calling. I feel we have so much in our ancient wisdom that when we try and make it relevant, contemporary, effective to the connectable to the outside world today, I think it has the potential to truly transform lives. So these are 2-3 things why I made that shift from being an electrical engineer to, if I might call myself, a lifestyle engineer.
So phenomenal. I mean, I think the big lessons for us, and I'll tell you one of my dilemmas as an MD and CEO, a big dilemma, and good that you raised this point, comes exactly from what you just said. First and foremost, your authenticity part, I loved it. No, you're not true to yourself. If you're not authentic to yourself, you can never be true to anything in life. I think that is something which is phenomenal. I think what you said. And the second thing which I strongly believe in, and that comes again from a lot of experience. And God has been kind. I could travel the world, like every nook and corner of the world at a very young age, meet a lot of people, and that is what I told you as an insurer, that privilege I have.
Yes.
But when I went deep down into understanding yoga, going through Yoga Sutra, understanding Bhagavad Gita or the yoga part of it, and the realization that whatever psychology, psychiatry that I read about, or the best speakers on philosophy, all that if I summed it up, would actually come to all those points. So like you said, our ancient text gave us so much learning. I think some of the disconnect was high. I'm very happy to see that a lot of people are actually getting connected to that. So that is a very, very positive thing I see in the country. And I think leaders like you
Sure.
have made a difference. And I feel very proud and honored, to be an Indian and to have leaders like you who are making a difference. Because it is not about religion. It's about connect
Of
to the
course.
philosophy. It is about the spiritual understanding and the happiness
Yes.
and the blissfulness. Exactly the point you mentioned. I think that
Correct.
has been so well elaborated in our books that if somebody were to spend some time and maybe
Yes.
have a conversation with leaders like you, understand it much better. But let me come to my dilemma, and it's good. I don't want to let you go because you started this topic. First and foremost, I want to do whatever I can do for my people. Now, for my
Mhm.
people, if I do good to ensure that I can provide a ship which gives them, like you say, a fat paycheck or anything that they desire for in a materialistic world,
Mhm.
can happen when the
Mhm.
company does good, when the customers get
Mhm.
served. So my obsession
Correct.
has been to run this company very well, so that my people who
Mhm.
are part of my entire company team, they actually get rewarded well, and so they can
Correct.
fulfill the desires that they have in their mind. No, now, I'm just telling you what my
Correct.
obsession is for me. Already for
Sure.
that, my customers will have to innovate. I have to build a big company, do that, and I have been doing it relentlessly day in day out. And when I see the happiness on the face of people, I feel very happy. But my
Mhm.
dilemma is exactly there. That happiness is short-lived. No,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I'm in this constant endeavor from the very beginning to
Mhm.
see how can I keep all those associated close to me, my customers, my partners, my people, super happy. No, and as a
Mhm.
leader, I felt and I do feel that's one of my primary responsibilities. No, because if they look up to me as a
Correct.
leader, I can't let them
Mhm.
down. I have to be with
Yes.
them at all time. But the
Yes.
disconnect that I have is that this, whatever I've been doing, has not, in my mind, been able to give them a complete blissful experience. It
Mhm.
gives
Mhm.
them happiness.
Yes.
It gives them happiness for some time. Now,
Correct.
I can't do what you did, Swamiji, way back. Maybe I could have done, no, maybe if I take myself back 30 years back, maybe I could have done exactly. We have met 30 years back, maybe it's too late for me. Now, the dilemma you're is in this context. Now,
Mhm.
we are into this curve, into, no,
Yes.
doing. And my obsession with people, I can't see a
Mhm.
sad face. And just to give us
Mhm.
one incident, and some of my people who are watching can vouch for this. If I walk into any place, if I don't see anybody smiling, I stop and ask the person, no, anything
Mhm.
wrong? What can we do? I just can't handle
Sure.
that. You know, now
Correct.
help me.
Correct.
What do you think, no, is the right way, and how can I ensure that I
Yes.
can make it blissful in the context of things
Yes.
that we're and we're not going to
Yes.
shut the company. That's not the solution. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tapanji, for that. But firstly, you don't have to shut your company. Like you were referring to the Bhagavad Gita, and when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, Shri Krishna did not ask Arjun to shut his company. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken so that the company can be run well, so that
Right.
Hastinapur can be run well. The message of the Gita is, you alluded to that in your question, is not about a religion. When we're talking about this ancient wisdom, we are talking about a way of life. We are talking about a mindset. We are talking about a set of universal values and principles which, when applied, can transform the nature of our work, can transform the nature of our happiness, can transform the nature of our productivity, can transform the nature of our interpersonal dealings, can transform the nature of the quality of our joy and our happiness. So we are talking about a set of universal principles and values for which one definitely doesn't need to give up. Right? It's not about giving up, it's about integrating. You know, it's about integrating and bringing these values and these principles. And since we have professionals today, we're talking in particular about the workplace. Right? And since your question is also about that, that how do you kind of really make sure that all of these are integrated together? Like one side of it is you're able to give them a thick fat paycheck which allows them to fulfill their desires, maybe get a BMW, maybe get a 3 bedroom flat at Piramal Mahalakshmi in Mumbai, maybe get their desires fulfilled. And you mentioned that that happiness is very short lived. So here's what I want to bring in three different terms. Right? One is called happiness, second is called satisfaction, and third is called joy or bliss. And I think we definitely need to understand the difference between the three. These are very loosely used. I want to be satisfied, fulfilled, happy, joyful. We use as if they're synonyms, you know. They're three different terms. Now, when we're talking about the word happiness, we are talking about the experience that we feel or we derive based on our dependence on somebody or something outside of us. Right? Like I eat a good preparation and I get a great experience. That's happiness. I buy a new car and I feel comfortable. That's happiness. I have a relationship with somebody and they praise me. That's happiness. Right? So basically, for that experience, I need something outside of me. Right? Now, इसको हिंदी में हम सुख कहेंगे. Right? Sukh. Now, it's funny because in this case, we need something outside of us to be happy. At the workplace, it means a good work culture, a good work ethic, a good work ethos, a good pay package, a good team, no workplace politics, no toxic bosses, no toxic team members, great growth opportunities. These are all things external and outside of us. And we say, I'm very happy at work because all of these boxes are ticked. You know what I mean? So the number one thing with happiness is I'm dependent on something outside of me. And the number two thing about happiness is because I'm dependent something on outside of me, there is a potential for disappointment as well. Like if I depend on somebody, today he'll praise me, tomorrow he won't. Right? If I'm depending on happiness in a car, today the car is giving me happy, tomorrow the car is the same boring car, after a year the same model. So there's a lot of disappointment that can creep in when we are dependent too much on things outside of us. So work culture included. If I'm constantly dependent on things outside of me, there will be disappointment. You can't change people around you. You can't change people around you. Some people are just hardwired to be who they are, So if you're going to be saying that, okay, these guys are all toxic around me, these guys are troubling me, you change a job and go to take up another opportunity, you'll find people like that there as well. So that's number one, happiness. Dependent on something outside of us, and which is precisely why also has a seed for disappointment. The second word is satisfaction. जिसको हम हिंदी में संतोष कहते हैं. Sukh and then santosh. Satisfaction or santosh is a very deep experience beyond what's happening outside of us, right? And therefore, when we talk about satisfaction, we talk about self-expression. So what it means here is whether you praise me or not, I'm finding my experience out of expressing myself, my work. In a relationship, whether you are reciprocating or not, I'm finding my satisfaction out of giving. That gives a deep sense of experience, santosh, satisfaction. Like at work, if I'm just going for chasing numbers and promotions and high ratings, 1 year I get them, another year I don't, and I'm disappointed. So my happiness is in a flux, changing. But satisfaction is I'm expressing myself fully and I'm giving 200% at my work. So I'm so true to myself that I'm deeply satisfied. I always love to tell the story of this one man who was making a temple. And in this temple, he wanted to install on a huge pillar, stamba, like about 50 to 80 feet high, a murti of Garuda. So he ordered this murti of Garuda to a sculptor. So when he went to the sculptor, after 6 months, the sculptor said, sorry, your murti is not ready. He said, you promised 6 months, right? And it's not ready. He said, no, just give me another 2-3 months, I'll be done. So the man said, fine. And he was walking around in the workshop to see the work of the sculptor, and he found a deity of Garuda, a murti of Garuda, exactly the way he had asked for. He said, this is the one, right? He said, yeah, I was making this one for you, but there's a problem there. He said, what's the problem? He said, there's a fault in that murti that I was carving for you. He said, may I ask you what the fault is? The sculptor said, if you see the beak of Garuda, the eagle, just underneath the beak, there's a tiny little dent in the marble. The man said, My dear sir, this Murti is going to be installed 50 feet above the ground. Who the bloody hell is going to see this tiny dent? The sculptor said, nobody will see it except God and me. Except God and me, and I will not do a half-hearted job. Correct? Now here, he's not seeking happiness, not dependent on what people are saying. Whatever people will say doesn't matter. He's dependent on self-expression and doing his best. That is where comes the second term, which is satisfaction. And this is such a deep feeling, nobody can touch this because it's not dependent on others, right? And the third one is called joy or bliss, which in Hindi or Sanskrit is called anand. So there's happiness, satisfaction, and bliss or joy. And in Sanskrit or Hindi, it's sukh, santosh, and anand. And when we're talking about anand or joy or bliss, we are talking about going way deeper than satisfaction, work, relationships, world, nature of everything around us, cars and homes. We're looking at self-discovery and connecting very deeply to our own selves, right? That is where the spiritual dimension comes in. And I think all three are essential in life, right? You can't say, I shouldn't have happiness. Why? Why shouldn't you have a good car? Why shouldn't you give your people a good paycheck? Why shouldn't their desires be fulfilled? The only problem is if you get stuck at happiness, life is miserable because it's always up and down, up and down. So you go a little deeper to satisfaction, and then you go a little deeper to bliss. So when all three are together and integrated, that is a complete life. That is a more complete and a holistic life. I always love to say, one guy asked a man, what is the difference between the word complete and finished? This man answered, if you get the right partner in marriage in your life is complete. If you get a wrong partner, your life is finished. But if the right one catches you with the wrong one, your life is completely finished. Now, jokes apart, but we want a complete experience in our life, and I think all three have their place. So satisfaction and joy should not undermine and discount happiness. We need it in our life. I'm just saying we can't be stuck in that. So the dilemma is here. You don't need to be in a dilemma. You're on the right track. You're giving them, helping them fulfill their desires. Now we should see what can we do to inspire them to be self-expressive, and what could we do to give them a small spiritual connect in whatever way, shape, or form. That makes it holistic.
I think it's so interesting talking to you because from your answers comes the next question, right? It just leads on its own.
But brilliant.
Gaur, I was reminded of a church I saw in Barcelona, where the architect, I remember it was Gaura, I think he was taking too much time. Somebody said, you're taking too much time. Can you complete this in your lifetime? He says, why are you in a hurry? The one who's hired me to do this job is in no hurry. He's going to this life. Yeah. So, coming to the same point, I think what you touched upon is a very strong point. And this is where I was also feeling that somewhere the spiritual quotient, people initially talked of IQ. If you remember, if I take you to the industrial era, then if you come to the era current about, let's say, 5-7 years back till then, you spoke of EQ. The leader, you should have very good EQ. But now spiritual quotient is something which is coming up as discussions. It has not become a compelling talk in those jargons that have you ticked on the IQ, EQ as when looking at a leader who should become the next leader. No, people still talk about EQ over IQ now, but SQ nobody's talking about. No, but murmurs are happening, and this is somewhere again I wanted your insight, because I'm strongly thinking that if a leader doesn't have spiritual quotient, he cannot, to your point, keep his people, no, rightly said, satisfied, no. And if they're not satisfied and they're not happy, they can't keep customers satisfied and happy. Take it from me, well, I've seen this over time.
Absolutely.
That person cannot make somebody else happy. And even if he tries to, it is going to be a huge effort which will not be fulfilling in its own way. So on this, what is your take? Well, how do we look at this spiritual quotient? How do we try and develop more and more of this, at least for people who are close to can I see that, how can I work on this? Because I strongly feel now that in the order, like somebody who has very high SQ would actually do better than somebody who has very high EQ, and who will do better than somebody who's got a very high IQ. That's my thinking. I may be wrong. So that is how it's developing in me. And since you alluded on that while you were answering the previous question, I think this automatically comes from there. How do we look into that? How do we look into that?
Sure. Thank you very much for that question again. It's again on the point because when we look at IQ and EQ, it's been in the talk and people have been speaking about it. A lot of elements have been incorporating in the corporate world to see how we can provide these dimensions to our people in the company. But when it comes to SQ, I think, like you rightly said, it's spoken of, but there's no concrete work that has been done in terms of making including elements of SQ at the workplace. I'm not saying it's everywhere, but by and large, it's not included. Like when I was in San Francisco, I went to give a talk at Salesforce, and at Salesforce, Mark Benioff, he has made it a priority to have SQ elements included at the workplace. So every floor of their office is a mindfulness space where people can go and meditate and practice mindfulness. A choice, not that it's compulsory. They have a choice, but there's a space, exclusive space dedicated on every floor of the workplace. They have an event every year called Dreamforce. Salesforce runs an event called Dreamforce, a 5 days event in San Francisco, and practically the whole of SFO is shut down. And I think at least a good 100,000 to 200,000 top leaders of the country come and attend this event. And one of the days of the Dreamforce event is dedicated to spirituality and mindfulness. So I see there are people in the industry who are kind of prioritizing SQ, but the question obviously is why? Why is SQ so important? Isn't it? I think any person who's working for an organization is always thinking of what's in it for me. Correct. Nobody's coming here to give their selfless voluntary service. Correct. If the company is making money, why would I go and do voluntary service? If it's a non-profit, I'd probably volunteer to serve. If the company is making huge chunks of profit, why the bloody hell would I go and work for free? Right. So everybody's thinking what's in it for me. So everybody's looking for a raise in their salary, looking for perks, looking for promotion. Correct. Now, which is precisely why when we bring up the concept of SQ, we need to also emphasize that SQ is not simply essential so that we have enhanced productivity or efficiency or effectiveness at work, but SQ is something that if we incorporate in our life, is going to help us in every aspect of our life. It percolates into your personal relationships, into your personal discipline, into your interpersonal dealings, into your work. Obviously, it comes very handy in every aspect of life. How does it come handy? If it's going to be helpful in every area of our life, how is it going to be helpful in every area of our life? Number one of the most important aspects of clarity in thinking, clarity in decision making, is a decluttered mental space. When the mind is cluttered, your decision making abilities and your thinking with clarity is jeopardized. So one needs to have a mental space which is decluttered. Now, what do you do to declutter your mental space? Do you have a pill which can help you declutter your mental space? Do you have a machine which can help you declutter your mental space? Which is precisely why I'm sure a lot of millennial professionals are attending this session today. I suppose so. And apps like Headspace, apps like Calm, have come to the forefront a lot today. Apps which teach meditation, and a huge number of youngsters subscribe to these apps and try to practice meditation or unwinding, mindfulness, whatever the word may be. What is it? What are these words referring to? To enhance your spiritual quotient, your SQ. And a high SQ means a low cluttered mental space. That's what it is. So if it's making a decision about your family life, what should your child be studying? Should you continue in this marriage or not? Should you be bringing your parents home or not because your wife's living with you? Or you're living in the US, someone's living in, your parents are in India. Should I be coming back? Should I be getting that? You need so much clarity to think with. And I think high SQ gives you that clarity because your mind is decluttered. I think one of the most expensive real estates that exists in the world is your mental space. There's nothing more expensive and valuable than this here. Right? And you don't allow any Tom, Dick, and Harry to come into your house for free, do you? Do you allow your neighbor to put trash into your home? No. But there's so much trash we allow so many people around us and situations around to load in our head. And with that trash, how are you going to find out what you were looking for in your home when there's kachra all over the place? So high SQ means less kachra, less clutter, right? That's number one. Now, number two, as soon as you talk about less clutter, that means more focus. What is stopping me from focusing? The clutter. My mind's going all over the place. So the clutter, everything that's in and around there. So as soon as there's less clutter, means more focus. So even if we are talking about it from the point of view of organizational productivity and efficiency, SQ means more focus. What is meditation? Meditation means to bring your distracted mind to focus at a point. Now that's precisely what's happening. If you look at studies from Harvard and Yale, and you will see organizational behavior is being studied and researched, especially at Harvard. And if you study these papers, you will see what distraction at the workplace costs organizations today. If the same employee, if the same person were to be focused, how that efficiency and productivity would have gone up, and what would it convert into in terms of profits? So that's number two. When you have a decluttered mind, you have clarity in decision making, and the obvious result of it is focus. When you're looking at SQ, the third obvious advantage of SQ is bringing in a very strong sense of purpose. In his book, The Culture Code, and also in the book Drive, Culture Codes by Daniel Coyle and Drives by Daniel Pink. Both are about organizations, and I love reading these books. In both of these books, by Daniel Coyle and Daniel Pink, one key element to keep people at the workplace happy is not simply financial rewards. That's one aspect to it, is a strong sense of purpose. To be able to do what you do to serve a much larger picture than our own selves. And individuals, I can't do it by my own. So when I'm connected to an organization which is doing it, I feel that sense of purpose. So when we're talking about a high SQ, we are talking about aligning ourselves with that sense of purpose. And then the fourth obvious advantage of a high SQ is that sense of santosha, satisfaction that I was talking about, where your self-expression is to its fullest. When you have reached the stage where you care more about a cause than about an applause, where you care more about expressing yourself than about impressing someone, is when you are really, really satisfied. And excellence is a consequence. Productivity is a consequence. Efficiency is a consequence. Effectiveness is a consequence. So SQ gives all of these. And when we have these at our workplace, they come in every other area of life as well. So I think, SQ is an absolute must, I feel.
Phenomenal, Swami. I think, if somebody had to translate or bring Bhagavad Gita to the current times and redefine what Sri Krishna mentioned, I think these would be the words, the way you put it. I think, which is
contemporary jargon.
I also had the honor of visiting Salesforce and meeting Mark. And one thing which comes there when you mention about that story, it comes to your mind if I look at some of the great leaders that were there in the corporate world, right from Steve or Mark, they all had some link to spiritualism, some link to India in its own way.
Absolutely.
And there's quite some time here. And if I look at the history of some good leaders, I see them initially to be in terms of very aggressive in terms of the materialism part, but as they move forward, I think the SQ is very high. So to your point, look at some successful businesses, look at some successful leaders. Something clearly comes out in all of them to the point that you just mentioned. They all have very high SQ. I think that's a takeaway for me. And I think this story and the way you put it also really helps us understand very well. And one thing I promise you that we are going to work much more on this in our organization because the obsession remains.
Brilliant.
And
Of course,
a
the
dipstick
the
once
corporate world needs more leaders like you who think about this.
like to bring us to the right thinking methodology. So I think we'll get you sometime to do a dipstick check in organization to see have we moved forward or not. I think that's a good thing. Once in a while, we should always get somebody. That's a problem with the
Yeah,
corporate world. We always have to have some measurement. There has to be
yeah,
a dipstick check. There has to be,
of
what
course.
level it happen, something of that sort. But I think
Yes.
there's something that has to be worked upon in a very intense way, is my belief, because that can only lead to a fulfilling life. And to the point you mentioned, millennials, I also noticed this. Like when I was, if in the definition of millennial, like we take it back to our time when I was younger, and I would be a millennial as per today's definition, I didn't
Yes.
have very much. I think I was more mindful than anybody was, not because I was great, simply because I
Yes.
didn't have television, I didn't have mobile, I didn't have internet. So, I
No
only had,
distractions.
yeah, so I had a mother who tell me the street light is on, come back home. That is the only instruction I had to comply with. And reach school in time,
Yeah.
don't bunk. I think that is all. Whatever I studied, got marks. I think
True.
that's all. But today's times become so competitive. Kids, I see them in coaching institution, learning everything. Right from dance, they're in a coaching institution. For tennis, they're in a coaching institution. For sports, they're in a coaching institution. For study, they're in a coaching institution. Not a single moment of their life they're leading in a way in which they are being themselves. So obviously the pressure on them gets so high that a simple app which just tells you 5 minutes to keep quiet and listen to music becomes so popular. So my last
Yes.
question, as we have short time, already shooting time, I think I can carry on with you for the entire, like 3 days. We again how the corporate world we are having so clearly defined. My last question
Sure.
is my next big, very big worry. I somehow feel, and I may be wrong, that no, the way kids are growing up now, they're
Mhm.
being put in a very hyper competitive environment,
Mhm.
where even something which to us was like fun and has no relevance, no, like just going playing
Mhm.
out cricket or something. If you learn well, fine. You don't learn well,
Yeah.
fine. Has become so competitive that at
Mhm.
that young age, if that is how we're going to groom our children up, then
Mhm.
tomorrow, what kind of world are we going to head into? No. And now, if I look at the
Correct.
case of depression is so high, the cases of
Correct.
suicides are moving up. And I have made the
Yes.
statement, my country may have become richer, but
Mhm.
has definitely become less happier than when I was
Mhm.
younger. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
on this,
Yeah.
some insight from you as to what can be done. This
Sure.
is a correction. That is how I see it. But like, what is it
Sure.
that we can do as a corrective action? No, I think for
Correct.
the future to come through.
Correct. Correct. Thank you very much for that question as well. Just before I forget, the fifth aspect of SQ, which I forgot to mention, is a very strong coping capacity with the stresses, the pressures, the deadlines. Corporate life means so much of that. Right? So high SQ and deep connection with oneself means the ability to cope with it effectively as well. So it just came to my mind as you were saying it. So, but coming back to the question that you were asking me, Tapanji, about the high competitive environment that we are in today. There's so much pressure to perform constantly. Our youngsters grow up like that. मैं कई बार कहता हूँ एक एक लड़का था कॉलेज का लड़का और घर आया रिजल्ट लेके और पिताजी ने रिजल्ट देखे ही फेल्ड इन हिज एग्जाम्स करेक्ट तो पिताजी बोले लुखे देख देख तेरे क्लास में वो मेरी पढ़ती है ना देख उसको देख वो फर्स्ट आई है देख और तू फेल हो गया कैसे फेल हो गया ही सेड उसको देख देख कर ही फेल हुआ पापा आप ही बोल रहे देख देख now jokes apart look at how we were brought up sir we were brought up in a way we were told to look at others constantly देख तेरा भाई कितना अच्छा पढ़ता है see how your sister behaves well see how your friend is doing well I want you to be like him I want you to be like her oh you are the son of an engineer you have to be like papa you're the son of a doctor you have to be like mama when you've been raised with being like someone how can you be yourself rather than being taught to compete with our own self and be a better version of who we are every single day and thereby reach excellence in what we are, we've constantly been given the bar of somebody else and something else. So I think one of the biggest disease of the human mind is comparison. Comparison has its obvious advantages. There's good comparison as well. When we look at others, take inspiration from their qualities and do what we do with the same commitment, with the same discipline, with the same zeal, with the same enthusiasm. But when we look at somebody else and try to be them, we can never be them. We were created to be us. Correct. So competition is a must for growth. How can we not compete? Correct. How can we not compete? We must compete to grow. But whom are we competing with? We are meant to be competing with our own selves and becoming better and better and better versions of ourselves every single day. Now, the current scenario, unfortunately, is not like that. And sorry, I have to say this. I said this in many conferences, but I don't mince my words with the truth. Truth must always be spoken. One of my favorite quotes is this: honest people, they change their ideas to align them with the truth. And dishonest people change the truth to align the truth with their ideas. Right? So we don't want to be dishonest. We want to be honest. We want to align our ideas with the North Pole truth. Correct? So here's how I look at it. One of the biggest issues is that the industry seeks numbers all the time. The business is about numbers, undoubtedly. And they have to be kept, we have to keep them going. That's how the economy grows. There's no doubt about it. But when we're talking about numbers, when any HR professionals or their HR team wants to induct people into an organization, you want people from tier 1 cities. You want people from tier 1 institutions. Even from tier 1 institutions, you want people with the best grades and the best marks and numbers. So what have we defined as a standard for competing in the world? Numbers. You have to study hard, get into IIT, IIM, Yale, Harvard, Stanford, MIT, whatever are the good institutions, and then come out so that you can get a great job or a great opportunity and make a lot of money. Now, when that is the standard, guess what parents will push kids for? Beta marks lana hai, beta numbers lana hai, acha grades lana hai, kyunki tabhi acha opportunity milega. And what are educational institutions? Demand and supply. Industry's demand is what? Numbers, marks, grades. So education is geared towards what? How to get grades, how to get numbers, how to get marks. And what do you get at the end of the day? Sorry to say, but a bunch of people who don't really know what they're doing. Who really don't know what they're doing. Because what they did was only for numbers, marks, and grades, not for studying. Now imagine if the industry changes its benchmark. Saying we are not looking for grades, we are looking for passion. We're looking for people who are passionate about what we want to do in our organization. Now, if the industry says we are going to hire passion, what are parents going to be telling their kids? Beta passionate ban, because tabhi job milega. Right now it's marks, so beta marks la. If it changes to passion, beta passionate ban. And what will educational systems say? How to identify your passion. And guess what will happen? You'll get people in your organization who are passionate about what they love to do. Number one, they are happy because they are loving it. Number two, they are excellent because they are what they are. That's them. Number three, they're self-inspired because they love it. You don't need people to monitor them all the time. They are going to walk the extra mile because they love it. So I feel competition is an absolute must. How can we not have competition? But when we are competing with our own selves and identifying our passion and becoming better versions of ourselves, not only are we happy and satisfied, not only do we excel, but we walk the extra mile to contribute to the organization and to the nation and to the economy at large. So I feel this equation slowly needs to change to move from marks and grades to passion. And I hope one day, slowly and steadily, the education system will change. But for that, the industry has to hire passion. It's an interlinked ecosystem. What the industry hires is what parents pressurize kids for. And what parents need, that's what education system provides. So I think that ecosystem needs to slowly and steadily be redefined and remodified. Yeah.
That- That's a very good insight, no? But I've had personal experiences on this, so I'll just add this before I close.
Sure.
I'm not
Sure.
a PA, I'm a scientist of education. Yeah.
Oh,
So a
wow.
lot of people ask me this question every time that where you do MBA from. So I'd explain, no, in my interviews that I'm not an MBA, I'm a scientist of education, and I like my
Uh-huh.
job and that I want to be an insurer. I'm very happy to insure. I get paid to do good, and I want to do this.
Correct.
Once, and not only irritated, once I was a bit irritated, and this question came again, where do you MBA from? I said, I did from
Uh-huh.
Street University. They said, where is I said, every village, every corner. I actually started a series called
Yeah.
Street University on that basis, Swami, just on this point. I've noticed this also in employees. I have seen some employees who are so
Mhm.
passionate. And if I look at the qualifications, it may not be to the mark, no, that you would call for a very certified, but they do so good and
Correct.
phenomenally good. And their love for work, what they do, and the way they deliver is phenomenal. I think the way we judge people in terms of recruitment has to change. I think that's again the next
Absolutely.
big takeaway which I have. I'm going to talk to my head HR and see how do we do that. He's already working a lot on this. I think I've already spoken to
Brilliant.
him. I
Brilliant.
said, I want to look at people who are passionate, who have that hunger to make a difference to society and life. The rest is
Correct.
incident. We'll get it done. I said, the
Yes.
intent is integrity is fine, and the person has the
Correct.
hunger to make a difference to society. Rest will manage. I think that is what
Yes.
no, we are working on. But again, the point that you said, very difficult. How do we get that? No, the reverse also. No, we want to college
Yes.
institute. The point that we are missing, which comes from our discussion, is we have to popularize that. That we're not done.
Yes.
We put it on a website looking for this qualification. We have to start talking to
Correct.
institutions that we want this kind of kids. We have
Correct.
to
Correct.
popularize this. That is what we are missing
Sure.
about. Murmurs are happening. People are talking about it, but it has not become popularized. I think this discussion between us has actually gave this insight to me that we should popularize this more, and
Sure.
then
Yeah.
and then it also comes to one thing which my father taught me very early: is that competition is good, comparison is bad. And I think that is where I think you also, when you gave that summary, as I was thinking
Correct.
about, you was telling me when I was a kid, exactly the point that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Lot of
Yeah.
takeaway, Swamiji. As I told you, we can have this conversation for days together and not get over
Yeah.
because there's a continuous
It's a
perspective.
continuum. Yes.
Picked up a couple of very strong points which we'll definitely work on. A lot of gratitude to you, Swamiji, for your time, and in your
Thank you
honor,
very much.
we planted a small tree in the Ganges,
Oh, lovely.
uh, no here. So this is a
Oh,
small
thank you.
our side,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
because I think the source is critical. We're missing out somewhere in the
Yeah.
way it should be there in the world. We
Yeah.
get less of it, so we try to do this more and more. But lot of gratitude, Swamiji, for your time.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Such an
amazing.
honor and pleasure to be with you and have this meaningful conversation. Very grateful to be with you. Thank you.
My
Thank
honor,
you.
Swamiji. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.